Andrews has quite an impressive LinkedIn bio, and I would like to quote from it. Ethel says about herself, "I'm a creative educator who is passionate about people. My motto is each one, teach one. I'm driven by a need to know more and do things better. I'm very analytical in my thinking process and work hard at achieving my goals. I love research and problem solving." Ethel, a warm welcome to the Strategy Maker podcast.
Thank you so much, Jani. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for joining me. If I can remember correctly, we met around 2010 when we were working for the same company, and you were the National Sales and Marketing Manager for the wound dressing business unit. You then moved through the corporate ranks and ended up completing your PhD, and then you opened your own wound practice. But before I jump the gun, tell us more about yourself, your background, where you grew up, school, studies, all of it that we need to know from you.
Okay. So I grew up in Brakpan, so that's where Carnival City is. I completed my schooling there. Then I went on to what was then the Rand Afrikaans University, and I obtained my primary degree in nursing. But that was by default, so I always had a passion for people, but I didn't think that I liked people enough to be a nurse. But as I then went on through the years, I then developed a love for people and a love for serving. But I soon got tired of it and went into corporate, where I thought the money bug bit me. So I stayed there, I got married, I have 2 kids, I teach Sunday school, but then my desire to learn and to help others then led me to do first my master's degree and then my PhD, where I worked then in corporate for a couple of years, but I felt that I'm not serving enough and I wasn't really using my skills. So that's why I left corporate to do the very daunting and challenging thing of opening a practice. So the first 6 months was a nightmare, but then after that, I think it got easier when the business side of things started to make sense, because one has to separate the business from the healthcare, because you need to be able to sustain yourself in order to want to serve continuously and be able to sustain yourself and then the business. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment. I just completed another course in stoma therapy, so I think I'm a lifelong learner.
Oh, that's amazing. So what do you call your practice?
Oh, so my practice is called WoundDoc. And the reason for that is my specialty is wounds and wound care. And then because I've got the doctorate degree in it, I'm still a nurse, but I have a special interest, or they say a special knowledge, when they afforded me the doctorate degree, and that's why it's WoundDoc.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Yeah, the real reality of opening or being an entrepreneur is obviously that those financial statements that also needs to make sense. Yeah. And then to kind of juggle the balls between running a business and delivering the service that you're selling. So, you've been very brave, and I think you're doing very well. We will hear more about it later on. But so you are the forever student, obviously. How important is the role of studies in your life? And tell us a bit more about your PhD topic.
So for me, I have learned that you can be anything you put your mind to. So if you want to be an astronaut, you can be that if you are prepared to put in the hard work. So from the time that I've completed my first degree, I've always been hungry to know more, because when I get to that mountain, then I realize, but there must be more to life than this. And this is then what led me to continue studying, because I believe that if I can understand completely the pathophysiology or the type of wound that the patient has, I'm able to deliver evidence-based care, but also make informed decisions. Like where I grew up, there was a lot of boererate. So if a patient has a boil or somebody has a boil, you will put a potato or hot pop on it so that you could pull it out. But what was the science behind it?
Yeah.
And we find that even now, in my role as the burns president, people are still doing a lot of boererate. So when somebody gets burned, for instance, people still say, put Colgate, put whatever that they can find, ice But if we understand what is happening to the patient, we then know where the myth is, and we can separate myth from science. So for me, that was important. So this is why I always want to know more so that I can do better for my patients, because I find that we can't know the minimum and expect to deliver the maximum. So you need to know the maximum so that you are able then to give your patient exactly what they need. My PhD topic started when I was in corporate, actually. So I used to go around to the different hospitals, and then when I get to the hospitals, I would see variations in care. So you would go to the one hospital in Johannesburg and you would see that this is the type of care that the burn patient is receiving. And then you would go to Cape Town and you would find same hospital, same type of patient. I mean, it's both government hospitals or both private hospitals, but the care differs like enormously. So I then started reading about what should be done, like what is the evidence saying with regards to standards of care. And the biggest variations I would see would be in burns. So I then decided to then go and explore that topic. What is the standard of care? Like whether you are in China, or whether you are in South Africa, or whether you are in America, what is the minimum that you should be getting? And based on that, then I looked at what does the evidence say? What is the care that should be delivered? And then I then wrote up the guidelines to inform it. So whether you are in South Africa, or whether you are in America, you should be able to have access to a minimum amount of care. And that was then the topic for my research.
That's amazing that even though we think wound care is quite my perception, one of the most basic cares that you need to give a patient, because most patients do have a wound somewhere, arriving or getting the wound because of an operation. It's still such a developing field, and obviously there's a lot of scientific research regarding treatments and bandages and whatever you need. What different kind of treatments is very trendy today?
So the thing is, that's a very broad question, because the different wounds, so you mentioned, for instance, if a patient has an operation, so that would be classified as an acute wound. So that we hope is a open and close, and that shouldn't be complicated. So you can put the simplest dressing on there. But we must remember that that wound belongs to a patient. And that patient has got a whole lot of other things going on with it. So if it is a diabetic wound, you need to make sure that the patient's diabetes is under control. Or if it is an elderly patient, you need to make sure that the patient is eating adequately. So even a wound as simple as an operation that is uncomplicated, you still need to look at the whole patient. So that means you need to look at the patient holistically and not just the hole in the patient.
Yeah.
For burns, for instance, the big thing is early removal of dead tissue and early closure. So the quicker we can get any wound healed, the better. So at the moment in burns, what is topical is cadaver skin, or where we had a whole drive where we were asking people to donate their skin so that we can save children and people who burn. So so you would literally be after you have deceased, you will then donate your skin so that we can save lives of children by giving them your skin. So that's a big thing. We also have synthetic skin that is being used. So the question was, what is trending in burns? So it is when you donate your own skin. So after your relative has deceased, they would then donate their skin. So that is literally like, organ donation. We can do skin donation, or you can use a synthetic skin, which is then used either porcine or bovine. So that's either pigs or from cattle, that they then formulate in a lab and they put that on, because we know that the research is showing that the earlier you close a patient when they don't have skin, the better their mechanisms fall into place. So they're able to regulate their temperatures, they are losing less fluid, and overall, holistically, they just tend to do better. Also then in terms of antimicrobials, we know that we shouldn't be putting antibiotics into patients for every single type of wound, because we know that antibiotic resistance is a problem.
Yeah.
So we find that if you are treating it locally with an antimicrobial, which is like an antibiotic, but you just apply it to the wound, we have good outcomes as well.
So if I want to be part of skin donation, does it link onto what do you call it, organ donors, or can we work through you for that?
So in South Africa, you have to opt in. In other countries, as soon as you're an organ donor, automatically they will then also ask the family if they are prepared to give their skins. But in South Africa, we've got the tissue bank or the skin bank, where you then have to opt in. So even though you are an organ donor, you need to then on your form tick that you would also like to donate your skin. There's a lot of myths around skin donation. So when a patient donates their skin, you can still have an open casket, because that's the question we ask frequently. So they won't take any skin from any body part that is visible. So your face is left intact, your neck is left intact. So they will literally just take from your thighs or somewhere where you can't see. Also, with regards to the skin donation, the patient has to be deceased. So after they have harvested all the other organs, then they will take the skin. So you can't be a live donor to donate skin in our context. So you have to opt in. There is the skin bank where you would then have to tell them that you are interested in recycling your skin.
And you do have links for us to share with the audience below the video?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
I will share that with them. So obviously you must have quite a few interested cases that you've done before. Anything that you would like to mention to us?
Burns is very close to my heart, but another big one that we are seeing that is always a very challenging type of wound is patients who have diabetes. So what happens is when a patient is diabetic, they have what is known as neuropathy. So that means that they lose sensation in their feet. And you will find that a diabetic patient will walk and step onto a nail or earring and not even be aware of it unless they explore their foot and examine it and see what's happening. So I recently had an elderly gentleman who came in where he wasn't aware that his one of his toes was going black, because he just saw it and he thought, this is okay, but nothing to be worried about. But in the end, when he went to the hospital, that was around June, they had to amputate that toe because he had gangrene in his toe. And then while he was in hospital, when they admitted him, they realized that he has got COVID. So now you've got two things going on. You've got a diabetic patient with poor blood supply. And on top of that, the patient then gets COVID. So again, that then influences how much oxygen is being delivered to the foot. So typically, where elective surgeries were canceled, we were not expecting this patient to have a good outcome. But what was important is that if the patient's sugars are controlled, they generally tend to do better. So the wounds tend to do better. And then when we got his oxygen levels up with the treatment for COVID, we then were able to manage to only have him amputate the one toe and not the whole forefoot, because this is what could have gone wrong. So generally, diabetic wounds are very complicated to treat, but when you are doing all the other things, so this is why I keep coming back to, it's not just the hole in the patient. You need to make sure that the patient's sugars are controlled. You need to inform them that it is an ongoing process. They need to see a vascular surgeon to make sure that they've got good blood supply. So it is a whole multidisciplinary team approach.
Yeah, so obviously then you work in this whole team according to what the patient's needs are. Okay, so you've mentioned previously that you've done a Stomachache course recently?
Yeah, so that's very recent. So that was last week. Again, that is also something that there's a big need for it, because we find that with any type of cancer, early detection is better. So we find, and it was interesting for me when you look at it, younger and younger guys, for instance, being diagnosed. I have a personal friend who was diagnosed with colon cancer. And the adjustment from being a 40-something-year-old young father with beautiful career to having to fight cancer and then having to use a stoma bag where your excretion goes into was a huge mindset shift for him. So I then decided, let me go in again, because we want to do what's best for our patients. Let us go and explore and see how that works. So the course, it's a 6-month course. I'm not finished with it yet, but it is so amazing that if we do screening early, we can pick up these things. And if we see the warning signs, if something is not right, we need to explore it, whether it's breast cancer or whether it is a lump somewhere where you didn't have or consistent pain. I think we need to better educate the public that this is normal and this is a deviation from normal. So anything that is a deviation from normal, if suddenly your bowel movements, for instance, isn't the way it used to be, it's something that you need to explore. So that's what I did.
That's another interesting field. So you are actually wearing a few hats during the day. It's not one specific thing.
Oh no, I'm female. It's never just one specific thing.
We're the ultimate ball jugglers, yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
And that brings me to the next question. Obviously, making the money in corporate, playing your role there, and having a nice background where you can actually gather academic. You've got access to research and all of that, and all of a sudden you think, this is not all I want in life, I need to move out. How did that decision, that business decision came about, and what was the discussion between you and your husband, I would think?
Yeah, no, so that was a tough one, because I always joke and said that I had the corner office job. You know, when you're a child, you always wonder, when I'm big, I want the corner office and I want the nice car and I want the comfortable salary. But moving away from that I think it was one of the most daunting things, but in hindsight, one of the most rewarding things that I could have done. So when I left, I literally left with my bag. There was no backup finances, there was no safety net, there was nothing, but all I knew is that I had a passion for learning more, and I had a passion for doing better, and I thought that the universe would provide. So for 6 months, my husband had to buy my stock, and he had to pay the rent for the rooms, and he had to cover my expenses. So definitely the entrepreneurial journey isn't an easy one. After 6 months, like during the 6 months, there were quite a few times where I thought, I'm going to call my old boss and ask him, can I have my old job back? You know, because the comfort zone that's where I was at. But my husband told me that once you've made up your mind, you know, you have to see it through. So give it a year. If after a year you're still not convinced, then maybe go back. So during the course of that year, there were many days when I decided, no, this is not for me. But being a religious person, I had this discussion with God where I said, you know, if you want me to serve your people, you need to provide. So you need to give me the patience. You need to give me not only the patience to treat, but also patience to let the process unfold and to grow. And yeah, it has offered depth to my training, because I do a lot of international presentations and a lot of lecturing at the university. So when I speak now, it's not just based on the theory, but I can also then talk about the practical side of things that I wouldn't have otherwise have known.
Yeah, that's amazing to have that exposure. So how do you find business opportunities in this space? Because obviously you're working in private healthcare now.
Yeah. So in terms of business, like with anything, there's always a me too, you know. So I always joke and I say that I make wound care sexy, because we try to engage our patients and we try to make it different. So when a patient comes in, we literally sit down, we have the interview with them, we discuss the pathology of what is going on with them, whether it's a diabetic ulcer, whether it's a burn, what is the expected outcome, what could possibly go wrong. So when patients come to the rooms, I tell them, sorry man, you thought you just coming for a wound dressing, but the reality is we need to engage with you, because I believe that in health, the patient has to be a partner, because I see them for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then they go home for the rest of the 24 hours. So making that shift and trying to be different, that's important. So even though a lot of nurses are doing wound care, I don't think that all of us necessarily have the background information, and that's important. And let me expand on this. So historically, wound care has not been a specialty. So anybody, it was part of our basic training, and they would teach you how to put a plaster on. But because you mentioned earlier in your introduction that it is dynamic and it is evolving, it's almost as if it's a live organism. What is relevant today is not relevant tomorrow. And we find that because people have that basic understanding of it, they think that me too. So it's like you have Sasco bread and you have got Blue Ribbon and you've got everybody else. So everybody wants to be bread. But wound care, I find that the people that better serve their patients are those of us that does the effort to understand what is going on, what is new, what is evidence-based, because it's about accommodating your patient, who's then your partner in this whole process of wound healing.
So, and I think that's in any business, it's a good differentiator. Obviously, people buy from people. So you're selling a service, which is wound care, and they buy from you because they feel welcome. They feel that you remember them. You know all the details, and that's so important when you do that's part of your marketing program. Actually, you're marketing yourself as that. And on top of it, I think your difference is because you have this academic research approach to the problem. It's different. It's kind of you've elevated the market a little bit there. People might feel there's low barriers to entry into this market, but actually they aren't. You must be really clued up on what you're doing. So that's a good approach to have, and obviously competitive advantage for you to have. But walk us through the steps you needed to take to open this private practice.
Okay, so with anything in life, location. So firstly, you need access to the hospital. And I have recently got, they've allocated rooms to me in a hospital, but the barriers to entry is enormous because already there is a wound care practitioner in the said hospital. And then I am here, people don't know me, they don't know my reputation. It's like a default setting. So they keep reverting back to the old practitioner because this was the status quo as it has always been. So what I then did, and I'm going to use this new hospital as an example because this is the recent one, I had to go and market and sell myself and introduce myself. So people don't care what you know. So all the qualifications in the world, if they don't trust you and know that you care, it's nearly impossible to get in. So I have to be firstly consistent. I have to keep going back, being present in the theater, in the doctor's rooms, available in the hospital for questions. So often I find myself doing a consultation free at a patient's bedside, just so that I can then build the rapport and the network and take it from there. So the steps is obviously getting the space, being available, being consistent, and then being passionate, because wound care is not about putting on a plaster. That's what everybody else is doing. And the perception is I can go to Dischem or Clicks and I can buy a plaster. And I've seen people push a whole trolley full of things, and it works out like expensive because they are buying all the wrong stuff and then they don't get the result. So I find that it's about making sure that you're doing the right thing at the right time for the right person. So I do a lot of pro bono work, but that's not always what it's about. It's about making sure that you are there, consistent, and being present. So I haven't overcome all the obstacles because there's still the default setting, but when you do land that first patient, you make sure that you do your level best so that word of mouth it carries a lot of weight. And in terms of marketing, I find that I have patients from across the continent because I saw somebody there that saw somebody there. And literally last week, I had a patient fly in from Malawi to come and see me. I mean, they traveled past so many clinics. They traveled past they crossed borders to come and see me. But it's about the value of word of mouth. Yes.
Yeah. So how does your networking work with doctors? Is it also referral based, and that's why you need to build a network with them and other practitioners?
Yeah, so it's absolutely. So being seen as a member of the team. So in the beginning, you are just the nurse that just puts the plaster on. And then when you are then engaging them as a colleague, And this is why the information and the knowledge is important, because the terminology that one uses distinguishes you from the next me too. So initially, when they call me in, they expect me to literally just come and put on the plaster. But then I will then engage with the doctor. The wound looks ischemic. Did you notice? This patient is bleeding too much. Are you sure you obtained hemostasis in theater? Maybe we should rather do this. The patient has an allergy. So you're literally adding value to his practice. And then from there on, we form partnerships where they literally tell the patient, I'm going to do the operation, but Ethel will look after you, and she will let us know when you are ready for the next procedure. And it's about a whole feedback mechanism. So I am literally the link between the surgeon, the family, the dietitian, the podiatrist, or whatever else the patient might need.
And there's a lot of practical information that the family must take back home and go and implement there as well, because you will not be around 24/7.
Yeah.
So tell me, do you also need to register with the necessary medical aids to work with them?
So yes, so in order to work in private practice, you need to register firstly with the Board of Healthcare Funders, and they then issue you a practice number. So you will have your regulatory body. Because I'm a nurse, I belong to the South African Nursing Council. So you have to then make sure that you have done the due diligence there, maintain your practicing rights, etc. Then you get your practice number from the Board of Healthcare Funders, who then they register you with most of the medical aid. So your practice number then goes onto their database. You will have the occasional small funder that maybe didn't get your information, but yes, you don't physically have to go and register with every healthcare funder.
Okay.
They does it on your behalf.
So the system interlinks with each other. Considering, I was thinking now about this patient from Malawi, what is your feeling about online consultation these days?
Yeah, so generally, when it comes to technology, I'm very challenged. As much as COVID was horrible, it has also made us explore new things.
Yeah.
So I have had calls where people are in DRC and they have a burn because they saw my name on the burn website, and they would then give me a call, and I would then say, take a photo and then let me have a look. So I probably spend a quarter of my day looking at photos on the phone and then advising people what to do, because and this again speaks to knowledge. So you'll see the photo and then you need to ask them, do you see little black dots? The black dots is a hair follicle. So if you see a hair follicle, it means that the tissue has the ability to heal. What do you have available to you? So especially when I'm doing the consultations in Africa, I can't say use a specific gel that is only available in my comfortable private market when they are out in Africa, they only have potato peels. I then have to ask, okay, do you have an easy example is we use a lot of hydrogels in South Africa to clean off the wounds. So I then have to ask, okay, what hydrogels do you have? No, we don't have any hydrogels. Okay, do you have KY jelly for catheter insertion? Then they say yes. Then I'm like, okay, so put the KY jelly on, because it would be the equivalent for hydrogel. So it's about understanding. So COVID has opened it up. I did during the lockdown level 5. I still had to continue to work because it's not like the diabetic patients will suddenly goes away because now we are in the middle of a pandemic. That patient still had the water, they still needed care. But we had to reduce the number of contact sessions for that patient because every time they come out of their houses, they are exposed. So what I would do is I would see the patient once a week, and I would then educate somebody in the family, give them all the supplies, and then we would go online. And then they would be with their camera showing me this is what they are looking at, what should they be doing, is this normal, isn't this normal? So as much as I'm scared of technology, we literally had to embrace it.
There's definitely a place for that. And I think that obviously helps your patient to feel safe and secure and not be exposed to the virus itself. I want to ask you excuse toch, laat ek gou weer begin. 1, 2, 3. So in your mind, what is the biggest obstacle you still struggle with or have struggled with to set up a business, to get the room or the business part of things? Did you have to register a Pty Limited, or how did you go about that part of the business?
Yeah. So I was very fortunate when I left the corporate job, and 6 months into struggling, a company that I used to work for in my previous life approached me, and they said that they have got this corporate social responsibility, so they have got funding available that they would like to invest in the clinic, but they can't give it to me as an individual, so I have to then register it as a business. And we then registered, we did the whole CIPC, BEE status, etc. They then gave me a cushion, which then made the 6 months less daunting. So it could then, where my husband couldn't cover the supplies, that literally stepped in. So I didn't have staff for 9 months, where it was just me, because we couldn't afford salary. So I had to manage the administration, I had to manage the clinical side, I had to make sure that stock is being ordered, etc. But because there was that cushion, and not everybody has that cushion, but again, it speaks to where the God does provide situation that I alluded to earlier on, and that then kept us going. So as the business then grew, usually I could employ another nurse that would help me on the clinical side, and the business then grew, and we employed an administrator. So we're not a big corporate, because we would like to keep it family orientated, but it is a business. We have to do compliance, everybody's registered, we get audited, we even have an accountant now, so that's
amazing. Amazing. So but you do have satellite practices as well. How many places do you have?
So the initial clinic was opened at Life Brenthurst, which is in Parktown. So that services the patients that are on the lower options of the medical aid. So we service the Hillbrow, Parktown, Alexandra area. So it's not a big practice, and it's not big operations that will be carried out here. So it's a very small practice. And the need then necessitated that I have to open another clinic where it would then be able to supplement the income. So I then opened up the rooms at Netcare Mulbarton, which is in the south of Johannesburg. But they already had a wound care practice, so I was the second person coming in there. So I would then share my time between 2 days at the one hospital and then 2 days at the other hospital. And then before lockdown, I got rooms at Netcare Mulpark Hospital, which is a big hospital that has a lot of trauma. They've got a burns unit, etc. So that would be better in terms of getting exposure to a whole lot of different things, not just from the financial side, but it's a big, busy hospital. But then lockdown happened, and that idea literally had to be parked. So that practice, we are still in the infancy stages there. We have like 1 patient or 2 patients there, so it's not as big as we would like it to be, but it's okay, because for now, as the year is tapering down, there's less surgeries happening, because a lot of my business is reliant on surgeries that is carried out, and then I do the aftercare.
Okay, I want us to shift gears a little bit and talk about leadership. Specifically female leaders in our country. You are the president of the Burn Wound Society of South Africa. Give me your view on leadership today. What is your leadership style and the importance of developing leaders in South Africa, specifically female leaders?
I think that a lot of the problems we have in society is due to a lack of leadership. So whether it is in our houses, if we see that how things can go wrong, if there's not the adult, if the parent is not being the adult in the house, that's where things sometimes go amiss. I find that it would be true for politics, it would be true in our churches, etc.
Everywhere.
Yeah, but I think that the autocratic leadership style only works on toddlers. So where you would dictate. So I find now I've got a teenager and a tweenie, and even there, it doesn't work. So we run everything like a democracy, but we all know who's the boss. So we let my husband think he's the boss, but we all know who's the boss, So I find that it has to be a partnership where people have to buy in. So even in terms of when I'm discussing with my patient, I can't dictate to an adult what to do, what diet they should be going on, that they must do their blood pressures every day, they must do their sugars. It has to be a partnership. So I'm selling them the idea of good health, and they need to be active participants in it, because as soon as you disempower people and you take their power away, they will do what you want for a bit. But in order for us to have long-term results and not have the second diabetic leg ulcer or foot ulcer, for instance, they need to understand that the power still sits with them. So I just want to guide them, but I'll be the leader from behind. So steward leadership, I think, is very important, where you serve while you are leading. But I find autocratic only works on non-toddlers.
And maybe in the army, maybe.
Maybe in the army.
I'm not even sure about that. And female leaders that you have encountered in your travelings around the world, who has stood out to you?
Okay, so there is an amazing surgeon in KwaZulu-Natal that she has committed and dedicated, I think, all her time and energy. She's Nikki Alato. And she actually started the skin bank in South Africa, and she's all about Recycle Me. And if you are on Woolworths, for instance, you can make her trust, the burn trust, the beneficiary of it. And she does amazing work because she works on the pediatric side of burns, and she is just a whole wealth of information, and she is so passionate about it. And I think that is what should drive us, that for her, you don't have to wonder how she feels about skin donation and saving lives. She literally had a tattoo on her body made that says Recycle Me. So in her absence of her voice, people will know what to do with her. And she lives this value every single day. So for me personally, she was the past president, and she has opened up opportunities for me personally, but she has also just been a silent hero, where she just carries on with the work, whether people recognizes it or not. Her job is just saving little ones.
Amazing. Maybe we can reference her as well, if she will allow us, below the video.
I can ask her. Yeah.
We can do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about strategy and marketing, because this is now my passion, and I would like to know whether you follow a specific business strategy in your business. Have you sat down when you started out and say, this is the strategy I want to follow?
So this is the thing. I always believe that they should actually make business part of our curriculum. So as much as I am a clinician, the one book I don't pick up and read is business. So my husband handles the business side of things because he's a banker. So for me, if it was up to me, I would see the income, and then I can buy more dressings, or I can give myself a bigger salary, or I could, so that would be my approach to things. But I literally get a salary from the business, and that's my spend for the month, because we had to separate my thinking, because I want to come to work and heal the world. And then once I've healed the world, I want to use all the money that the world has given me, So and then he manages that side of things. So we didn't have a concrete plan. What the aim was, I just want to be able to afford my car, afford my medical aid, and do what I do. So much so that when I do the speaking engagements and people ask me like, so how much do you charge? Then I'm like, I will actually talk for free, so because that's what I love doing. So so we don't really have a strategy in place. We get the patients, he manages the money, make sure he saves, he has to account to the accountant for everything, but I don't have a plan.
What I normally see with entrepreneurs is obviously they've got the service or the skill that they can sell, and then the business starts, and the business start getting traction, and it settles in, and you're happy with the financial statements and you're gathering an income. And then at some stage, you get stuck again. You're kind of in a zone where you don't need to know, okay, but do we need to grow? Do we need to taper down? What do we need to do? And that's kind of the sweet spot for me, for an entrepreneur to sit down and then start drafting the strategy. Even if it's only for the next 6 months or the next year, that you can know what steps to take to get to that goal for the next, because you don't want to set up a business that's stagnant and stays where it is. You don't know, maybe you know your children is growing up, something might happen and they would like to embark with you, or whatever the scenario is. In South Africa today, I think we must have a vision of longevity, obviously, and get your business out there, growing and getting it better. But we will discuss that later on, because I'm offering you a free strategic session that we can discuss what is needed in your practice, or what we need to polish up a bit, or something like that. But it's so convenient to have a husband supporting you with all the daunting stuff, that you can focus on the part that actually energizes you. And we've talked about digital and all of that, and you mentioned that you have marketed yourself by doing networking, but how important is marketing in this space? Do you need to do marketing to get people on board or business in?
Yeah, so in term, you have to, so it becomes tricky in the domain in which we operate, because the Nursing Council says that nurses are not allowed to advertise themselves or their business or their skills. So the most by legal standards that I'm allowed to do is put a name board out and says I offer wound care services. That's it. I'm not allowed to do any more marketing. But the business can advertise itself. So the business can have a website. But Ethel, in my personal capacity, I can just be a clinician with a name and a surname, and that's about it. So in terms of the marketing, you can market the business, and that's important. But you very seldom will have a walk-in from nowhere. It does happen, but often patients would have heard of you from somebody, or they would have been referred to you by either their physician or their GP or whoever else. But unless patients are very, very knowledgeable and Googling stuff, their point of call is normally casualty. So if a patient gets hurt, they'll go to casualty for stitches, or if they have a wound, they'll go to casualty. So we find that unless the casualty refers to you, there's a blockage there.
Like I said, there are different channels, obviously, and I do think your business needed a website, an online presence, at least, that people can either find your space or get your telephone number or something like that to phone the rooms. But I know there are some restrictions around marketing in the healthcare space. Okay, so I would like to know a few personal questions, information from you. Share with me a few books that you've read lately, or what kind of genre do you appreciate?
Okay, so the last book I read was Okat. That's the title of the book. And it is by one Shana Fenny, if I'm saying her surname correct. So she is a girl that grew up in Cape Town, and she's just writing her memoir. It was a bit hectic because it's very personal, and what I appreciated and valued is the depth of it. So I would make an example. So she, in the book, mentions that she had 2 illegitimate children. And she then goes into like how she ended up there, like the type of abuse that she had. And so that for me was brutally honest. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I had a lot of aha moments, So I have a teenage daughter, so she grew up very privileged. So her mom was a teacher, and her dad he had a very comfortable job. And when I look at my daughter, she's very privileged because she has all the opportunities. So for me, the penny dropped is like, what goes wrong in one's psyche where you have everything handed to you, but still your life doesn't go the way your parents or you would envision it going. So I enjoyed the book. I had to put it down and like breathe, like this is
think
somebody's
about it.
reality. But it also makes you aware of how protected we think we are, and how we try to do what's best for our children. But despite all of that, things still happen. Your child could go out and get hit by a car or mugged or anything, and then that damages them so much so that the plan just changes direction. So that's the one. The one book that I recently read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But yeah, the honesty in it was at times very overwhelming. And then
just tell me quickly, is it an English book but with an Afrikaans title, or is it Afrikaans?
So she uses the dialect. So if she is saying something in Afrikaans, it will be in Afrikaans. So it's literally a bilingual book. So it's mainly English, but when somebody is speaking, or if her thought is in Afrikaans, she would then put the Afrikaans in there. And a lot of it is also, it's very South African and it's very Cape Flat. So it literally, the way people speak, all the nuances and all the, so all of it
I'm definitely going to pursue or investigate that one. But I've interrupted you. You were about to mention another one.
Yeah. So then before that, I read the Maya Angelou collection. So I did Letters to My Daughters. I did Wild Age Bird Sings. So my husband says that I should be switching off at night. So when I get home at the end of the day, after cooking and cleaning and whatever else, when everybody else is watching TV, I would sit next to them and sit and read a book. So I consume lots and lots of books, take a lot. I think they've got me on speed because I find that their books are a bit more cost effective than the other shops. Yeah. So
and the convenience of the delivery. I mean, coming home and there's a parcel waiting for you. How amazing is that? Yeah, I still remember me I'm so excited to visit the local library. That was one of my highlights every week. And now it's a different scene. It take a lot coming up, bringing stuff home for us. You've mentioned one of your icons in the industry, but you work in multidisciplinary teams. Who are your icons in the industry, or even in the business world in South Africa?
So I had the privilege of meeting Margaret Hirschbach, and her story resonates as something one aspires to. So she told the story of how her husband used to work in the refrigeration, and then things didn't work out the way it should, and eventually they purchased their first shop, and then it went from there. And it's literally, Hirsch's is now a franchise. It's a big family business.
Big business.
And she has the cooking shows that she does, and she has a woman development part that she does. So for me, she was doing, when I met her, she was busy with her MBA. And she is way advanced in her years. And for me, she's somebody that one looks up to. So it doesn't mean once you're over 50, life stops. It's like once you're over 50, you aspire to conquer something else. So she completed the MBA, she swims the Midmar, she travels the world, she speaks, for me, there's so much life in her. And I love the fact that when one day all her breath is out of her, she would have had a full life, and that's what I hope people will say of me. Yeah.
Now we must go full on. We don't know how much time we have, and I'm moving into the 60s space soon, and to me it feels, once you've done raising children and doing all the struggles of juggling the financials and then studying and all of that, you've got space for yourself. And I don't want to go and sit. I want to go and explore, learn. I told my one son is he's a coder. And I said to him, I still want to learn coding before I retire. He said, what do you want to code? I said, I don't know. You must teach me. I need to know.
Yeah.
Just a basic one. Just to make I listened to a podcast the other day about NFTs. And I want to know what it is. Why is this whole world raving? I know about Bitcoin and that trading, but why is the world now raving about NFTs? So now the children needs to tell me, okay, Mom, this is how it works. And then I can also understand it.
Yeah.
But whether I will get into NFTs, I don't know. That is a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
So, and you are available on social media channels, etc.
Yeah, so remember I said that I'm so scared of technology. So I have Facebook, like that's about it. So my daughter tried doing the whole Instagram and Twitter thing, but like it's so much time, like it's scary. So I probably should do it, but for now, Facebook is keeping me busy, and she says, Facebook is so dated. So
apparently it's very boomer. That's the boomer crowd gathering there. But for your business, are you online socially for them?
No, so I only have a Facebook account
okay.
under the WoundDoc name, but there it's mainly information sharing. So when it is, we've got pressure injury awareness month coming up, and then I will do a post like, okay, this is how you would relieve pressure, or if it is diabetes awareness, then like remember to check your feet. But it's not as active as I would like it to be. But
it can help a lot with educational stuff in your instance. I mean, we can chat about that as well. But do you follow podcasts, or what's your favorites that you follow online?
On Facebook, let me think. No, man. Okay, so I consume a lot of news. Eyewitness news and those ones. So because I'm not on Twitter, that's literally where I get my 702 updates and everything from. And then I do a bit of Raman Sharma, but there's not a whole. So when I say I do Facebook, it's not like people do Facebook. So it's something I do
like scrolling
from time to time. Yeah, but it's not
going down your feed.
Yeah, no. It's not something that I do full time, and a lot of the times. Yeah.
Okay, so you've mentioned a website. We can share your website link as well.
No, I only have Facebook, Sean.
Only Facebook. Okay, then we will
share
we will share the Facebook, but then we will obviously chat about the rest as well. So we're coming to the end of our interview, and I'm going to give you some a word or a concept, and you can give me a quick word back, or you can elaborate on it. And you mustn't take the first one personally, because I know you must now answer this one. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one I want you to discuss or describe or whatever is your beautiful hair.
So I'm a Leo. And so my birthday is in August. And the belief is that Leos are very preoccupied with their mane. But
that
for
makes
me,
sense.
So I don't know if I'm preoccupied with it, but I like change. So when COVID came, we had to then wear the whole. So before COVID, I used to have different cuts with my hair. I would grow it out, and then I would chop it off, etc. Then COVID happened, and we had to then cover our hair. So it was so much effort to go to the hairdresser to put it under a kappie. So I just decided, no, let me embrace this natural hair journey. And that was not a smooth journey, because you can only do so much with natural hair. So then I went through the whole weave phase. But so from the 1 month to the next month, the mane is always changing. So my husband and my son says it's like the moon, they can tell my mood by the hair. So that's where we are.
As long as I recognize you with the different hairstyles, that's the important part.
Yeah, no, I think it's better than the Duke.
But you look well in a Duke. I
Yeah,
think
so that's what I'm saying. So,
I've seen you in a Duk, so you can do that one as well.
yeah.
Okay, you've mentioned your children. So raising children in today's day and age.
Sure. Okay, so nobody ever tells you how difficult it is. And nobody ever tells you just how rewarding it is. So for me, my biggest critics, so they don't have to say anything, but everything I do, I think about what example am I putting to my children. So if I have a tough day at work, and I'm an emotional eater, I always think about what am I teaching my daughter? Is this how we deal with problems? So for me, they are mirror reflection. They make me better. Because I want to do better for them. So when I feel like giving up on something, they say, remember who's watching you. So that's literally true for me. So that's where they are on the one side when I say in terms they are my critics, because they don't have to criticize me. I do that myself enough on their behalf. But then the joy they bring it's insurmountable, so it's they are my pride. So when I'm doing a presentation, for instance, I would put up all my affiliations. I would put up VERDS, and I would put up WoundDoc, South African Burn Society, and I always put a picture of my children because they are the reason I wake up in the morning, and I want to leave a legacy for them. So they are my biggest pride in life. So I can go on and on and on about my children. And it's not about their accomplishments. It's about the souls that God entrusts us with and how we leave them behind, that we leave this world better because we left okay children in this world.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you are such a good mom. I know you're a very good parent and a couple, a strong couple together. So they will just grow from strength to strength. Okay, the next one, academics.
So that one, somebody was complaining over the weekend that every time they put forward a piece of document, an assignment, it comes back with all the red markings telling you where to improve. So for me, I always used to say that whenever you write something, you think you are delivering your best work. And this is your soul in there. And there's so much red marking on it. It feels like you cut your pulse and you just bled all over the paper, and they're telling you that it's not worth it.
So hard,
So for me, academics is the thing. My daughter, my son is busy with exams now. So again, it's about my outlook, how it will influence them. So I then encourage them, even though I know it's soul destroying when you put out your best work and it's not good enough. It's to tell them this is how you distinguish yourself from the world, So if anything was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody will have all the degrees. Everybody will write the A+ papers. But because it's not easy, the ones that keeps going at it will get rewarded in the end. And you get the small little paper for 2 minutes on the stage, but it was worth it. So for me, the legacy my children must follow is that academics, it's bleeding on paper, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. And if you do have the opportunity, obviously, and exposure to that, what a privilege that is. For me, that's a journey on its own to be able to study and write and dream about concepts, because that's all where you can get it from is from engaging with academic concepts and think, okay, but the world can maybe be a better place if we do it like this or whatever. But the next one is spirituality.
So I find that it is the be all and end all of who we are. It's our beings. So I can't separate myself from who I am and who my spirituality is. So I don't hide from it. I'm not apologetic about it. So even though we are in a secular world, I am me, and I am a Christian, and I own this space. So it's not about religion and an affiliation, but it's about the relationship that you have with your God. And because the God that I pray to is welcoming, I don't judge other people's religion or their choices, because my motto is that it is God's love, it's God's will to judge. It's his place to judge us. And it's the Holy Spirit's place to convict us. So it must change us to want to do and want to do better. And it is my job to just love. And I think that was said by Billy Graham when one day he quoted that. So ours is just to love everybody, regardless of who they are, what they look like, what their orientation or backgrounds is. And then the rest of it, whether they are right or wrong in their choices, that's God's place. So for me, spirituality is who I am.
And then the last one, South Africa.
So, yeah, we just came out of the elections. So
Yes.
there's a lot to be said about it, but I still believe that it's a country of hope. So I had the opportunity when I just qualified to go and study in Australia, to go and work in Australia, and we were all set we were going to go, but I couldn't leave my family and my roots behind, so we declined. And then before lockdown, when things were not, we just felt like, oh, South Africa's going nowhere. We thought, maybe we should go. But this is where our roots are, despite what's happening in politics, despite whatever's happening in the world around us. This is where our parents are. This is where our families are. This is what we know. So I always tell my husband, we agree on it. When we travel the world, because we've traveled extensively, the best thing about it is coming home, and for me, the best mode of transport was flying SAA, because then they play the South African music on your welcome. So despite everything going on in South Africa, it's still home. So I don't think I'll leave the country, because this is where my heart is. So, but yeah, I think it's a country of hope. And you could see it with the riots in June, July. So when the country was falling apart, normal, ordinary South Africans came together and picked up, cleaned the mess, and we started rebuilding. And that's who we are as a nation. There's always, things are not okay now, but there's hope, so that's where we are.
I think we're such a hopeful nation. And it's across all races. It's a South African personal thing. We don't give up hope ever. Yeah. If it falls down, we will start building the next day. And most of the people that I interview and I ask about South Africa, they answer the same as hope and opportunity, So let's keep pushing on. Dr. Ethel Andrews, I am so privileged to have you on the podcast, and thank you for joining me. I look up to you as a female entrepreneur, and I hope to see you soon in person. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Jani. It was so much fun. So I really enjoyed it.